morning. I'm Pete Najarian on this Monday morning. This is the Take for Market Rebellion. I got to tell you something. Last Friday, wow, what an incredible day. Especially, it was a half day. The volumes were still there. We were just underneath 40 million contracts on Friday on a half day. So that says a little something about it. Now, how about the pressure that was on the markets? The markets absolutely on an absolute just turned and burned to the downside as we were reading more and more about the variant and the latest about what's going on around the world and some of the potential for shutdowns. All of that, of course, putting incredible pressures on the markets. We were down 900 points. We stayed down 900 points. We were almost for that entire 3 hours down about 2.5%. And then the NASDAQ started to catch up as well. And the NASDAQ under some huge pressure, not quite as bad on a percentage move, but 350 points to the downside. That's about 2.5 or 2.25% or so. Absolutely getting shoved to the downside. And when you look at what was going on with the price of crude, just getting slammed, actually underneath 69. We closed closer to 69, but oil was definitely under some incredible pressure. We look over at the VIX, talk about some volatility. We've been talking about how it had been creeping higher and higher. So hopefully everybody was starting to prepare a little bit for this. And then suddenly we get into this mode with this market getting hit to the downside. The volatility is exploding to the upside. We get into a range of 24 to call it 29, and we closed not far off of the highs of the day at about 28.60. So we had volatility, we had volume, we certainly had the velocity to start the day. We just kind of stayed there after we hit those levels. But there was definitely some huge pressure, and pressure on areas like in energy, down about 4%. You look at those beta names, absolutely we're getting slaughtered. APA and EOG and Pioneer and the marathons, everything was under some huge pressure there. Financials were down over 3%. Oh, because of the fact that it's 10-year absolutely broke down, and we were somewhere close to call it 146, 148, underneath 1.5. That was something that really moved with some pretty good velocity to the downside. We also had industrials. They were getting slammed pretty hard. You'll take a look at Boeing, look at the financials. Because of that, we were talking about the 10-year and that slippage that we saw there. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, you know the names. American Express, absolutely all of them just getting crushed to the downside on Friday. Moderna, sort of a standout, looking pretty good. As a matter of fact, some of the stay-at-home names actually started to react pretty good because of what was going on in the variant and everything else. You look at Zoom, you look at Peloton, they were hanging in there pretty good. They were moving to the upside. Netflix and DocuSign, they were doing pretty well. Moderna, as I say, that was up about 20% or so. Chinese names, they were getting hit. They were under pressure. You look at PDD, you look at Trip.com, those kind of names. The Beta Energy, as I mentioned, Occidental being one of those, down about 7 or 8% on Friday. That wasn't so good. Cruise lines got absolutely just obliterated. They're down 11, 13%. You look at airlines as well, 9.5%. You look at American, you look at Delta, you look at all of those various names, United, UAL, all under some huge pressure, and names like Live Nation as well. Everything was starting to get pretty good. This definitely puts a little bit of a monkey wrench into things, at least for now. So we come back. We were not too happy about how Friday closed. We were closed right near the lows of the day. Not good at all. But you come back and you're thinking, well, it's Cyber Monday. What are we going to have? And things actually look pretty good. As a matter of fact, the Dow bouncing back pretty well. Early, we were up well over 350 points to the upside on the Dow and the free markets. We were up more than 200 points on the NASDAQ. Actually, the NASDAQ, very, very tight range, and it's been pretty strong for most of the morning. We were anywhere between up, call it 185 to about 225. Matter of fact, last I looked just a few moments ago before coming on, we were up about 200 points. Not the same story with the Dow that just continues to go a little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit lower. We're barely holding on to positive territory after being up well over 350 points. We were up 55 points right before I came on here. So a lot of pressure, a lot of movement. You look at energy right now, it was up like almost 3%, started to slip, and last I looked, up about 1%. Technology, sort of a similar story. It was up, started to give back a little bit, but actually didn't continue to the downside and held on. Meanwhile, we're looking at the semiconductors. They were a lot stronger than they are right now. They started to pull back. They were up well over 2.25%. When I just looked before we came on here, about 1.5% or thereabouts. Consumer discretion was strong. All the major indices were looking pretty good early, and then we started to see this little bit of a slip that we're seeing now. Financials have cut themselves in half from where they were. So airlines, they're strong in the pre-markets. Cruise lines, they were strong in the pre-market. We did have some weakness in a lot of those stay-at-homes. You look at Peloton, unfortunately, once again, pressure back on Peloton, pressure a little bit on Netflix, pressure a little bit on Teladoc. Those are the names that we're seeing a little bit of that. We're looking at volatility that did pull back, and we seem to be holding right in the 24s, at least for right now. 10-year did bounce back up around a little over 1.5, call it 155, something like that. So we are seeing a little bit of improvements, but the broader markets, and specifically when you look at the Dow in terms of the indexes, that one really has given back a lot. Moderna was up early on pretty strong. Twitter was up pretty strong. A lot of that going on, a lot of conversation about Jack walking away and all of that. Beta Energy, you look at something like a Diamondback, you look at Marathon, look at Pioneer, those names all bouncing back pretty nicely. Although oil, which did have a nice move up over 72.5, started to pull back. And when I looked last, it was down underneath 71. So that's kind of moving back a little bit further from that bounce, but still well off of those close from Friday. So on Friday, one of the names that we had that was pretty interesting was Kroger. And we hadn't seen that one name in a little while, at least as far as unusual option activity. We're seeing it again today. Makes it pretty interesting. We've seen some activity on Friday, some very large call buying. They were buying in the money calls at that time. Now, with the stock trading 43.30, about the same spot it was on Friday, we have a buyer of 11,000 of this Friday's expiring 46 calls. So last week they were aggressively positioning, and now they are aggressively positioning once again. Last week they were buying in the money calls, now buying out of the money calls. These calls are going anywhere from, call it 33 cents up to about 49 cents. I got one more, CBRE, commercial real estate. Now this one, we don't see this name very often. That's why it stuck up. And on top of that, some huge volumes that we're seeing, at least early on. Stock trading right around 99. We're talking about commercial real estate. That's the services side of that. 20,000 of the March 90 calls were sold. And you say, well, that's negative. No, actually, they weren't. There were December 90 calls were sold. And they rolled them out to March, and they're buying the March 95s, 20,000 of those. So it's interesting to see this. This is a winning trade. They still want to be in the money calls. They want a little bit more delta. You don't understand what I'm talking about when I say that. All of these various Greeks are what makes options trade. And that's something you really want to know a lot more about. You got to get educated about it if you're going to be in the derivatives markets for any kind of longevity. You got to be educated and you have to understand all of this stuff. But anyway, they're buying, they're rolling this trade all the way out to March from December and looking for more upside, but still a deep in the money call buying. They're buying the 95, stocks trading right around 99, looking for that extra torque. Folks, I hope you have a great day of trading. I will not be on any of those shows today. I got a little bit of a lighter week this week, so a lot going on. So I'm looking forward to that. A lot of exciting things going on. And of course, with these great markets and all the volumes that we've got, there's plenty to do in front of the markets each and every day. Let's get after it. Let's go. Have a great day of trading.